Welcome to the Sports Spectrum Podcast, where faith and sports collide. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Spectrum Podcast. My name is Jason Romano. It is so great to have you joining us today. We just want to say thank you to everybody who tuned into our last podcast, Sam and Emmanuel Acho. They were a lot of fun, two brothers who not only made their way up through the ranks and played high-level college football at the University of Texas, but them both making it to the NFL. Really great story, and just two really great guys. I'm glad they were able to join us, and their story is just really cool. So thank you for tuning in and checking that out. If you haven't checked that out yet, please do so. That was episode number 5 on the podcast. And again, it's Sam and Emmanuel Acho. If you like what you've heard, please leave a review on iTunes. The reviews help, and they help bring the podcast to more people. Let us know. Feedback is always welcome. We want to hear what you think. Email me directly, jasonromano22@gmail.com. You can also tweet at me at Jason Romano or tweet at the show at sports_spectrum. We just love to hear what you think. Any ideas you have for guests, any thoughts on how to make the podcast better, we welcome them. We just want to do what we can do to bring God the glory somehow, some way through this podcast. And we want your feedback to be a part of that. Today's episode is a bonus episode, really. We're bringing you 2 podcasts this week. Normally, we release our podcasts on Fridays, but we're releasing our interview today on a Tuesday. And our interview is with Carolina Hurricanes defenseman Jaccob Slavin. Now, Jacob's just a couple years into the NHL. He made his NHL debut November 20th of 2015. He played every game for the Hurricanes this past season, 2016-17. Carolina did not make the playoffs, but they had a nice season, and they're an up-and-coming team. And we talked to Jaccob about a lot of things, including his walk with God, growing up in a household with 5 siblings, how he proposed to his wife, how he actually met his wife and then proposed to her is a pretty great story, and just navigating through the rigors of a long NHL season as a believer and as a young believer, as just being 21 years old when he made his debut a few years ago. And then we do something that we don't normally do on this podcast, which is a rapid fire. We kind of go through a bunch of different questions and just kind of ask him some things on and off the ice. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll like this interview. Here is our conversation with Carolina Hurricanes defenseman Jaccob Slavin. Jacob, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you here. I've been following you for a little while now and doing some research on you. You have quite the interesting story for being so young at 22 years old. You're up there now with the Hurricanes, and even though you played 63 games last year in 2015-16, this past season, 2016-17, was your first full season in the NHL. You led the team in plus minus, had a nice season. Played almost in every game. How did you feel this season went for you?
It was a great time, like you said last year. Only playing 63 games is my first year as professional hockey, and so my wife and I, we started down in Charlotte in the AHL and played 14 games down there, and then got called up and played, I think like you said, 63 in the NHL, and then this year, just being able to play the full NHL season, it's been awesome. It's been a really fun adventure for the both of us.
What's the adjustment been like from year 1 to year 2 for you?
Just knowing the schedule, I guess. Last year was my first year professional, and switching from college was a pretty big change. And in college, I think I played maybe 34 games a year, and then going to this season playing 82 games. In the past month and a half or so, we've been either every other day or back-to-back game day. So it's been pretty hectic. But no, just getting used to the schedule has probably been the biggest adjustment for me.
What about you're 22 right now? You'll be 23 later. Soon, I guess in May, be turning 23 years old, and May 1st is your birthday. What, you'd say, okay, 22 years old, it's hockey, you're playing every day, recovery, no problem. But have you noticed or done anything specific to help with that recovery? Playing every other day, and hockey is such a grueling physical sport.
A little bit. My wife and I, we actually kind of laugh about this question because some people laugh like, oh, what do you do differently that makes you a professional or whatever? And I probably have one of maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't say the worst habit, but I'm definitely not super strict with my diet or anything like that. During the season, I eat just about anything just because losing so many calories out on the ice. I have to just feed my body whatever it needs. But no, I guess just taking care of your body after games is probably the biggest thing for me. Active recovery. Our strength coach for the Hurricanes, Billy Burniston, he does a great job with us after games and getting us recovered the right way.
That's great. I wish I was your age because I remember I could eat anything I wanted as well, but I'm in my 40s now. That's not happening anymore.
All the older guys on the team always give me a hard time saying, "Oh, you're not going to be able to eat like that when you're my age."
It's so true. I wish it wasn't, but it is. Let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning of your career. Take us back. When did that hockey career kind of start for you? I know you're in a hockey family, and we'll talk about your family in a minute. But when did that kind of start for you?
Yeah, so like you said, a hockey family. I guess I just kind of grew up in the sport. Started skating at the age of 18 months, I think, is when my parents said I was first in a pair of skates.
Wow.
And so just pretty young there. And so I think I was on a team by the age of 2. And I remember my parents always say they just were putting M&Ms all over the ice, and I would skate to one, pick it up, eat it, fall down, get back up, skate to the next one. And so I guess that's how I learned how to skate.
Wow. That's how you do it. And then, junior leagues and playing as a kid, youth hockey, that's pretty much what you were doing?
Yep. Grew up with Highland Hills Jaguars organization out of Westminster, Colorado. And then played Colorado Thunderbirds, played for the Littleton Hawks in Colorado for 1 year, and then off to Chicago Steel for juniors, and then to Colorado College for 2 years, and then the Carolina organization.
Nice. So we'll talk about that journey in a minute, but I want to go and talk about your family. You said you grew up in a hockey family. I saw you have, is it right, 4 siblings? So there's 5 of you in the household, brothers and sisters?
Yep, 4 siblings. I got an older brother, Justin, older sister, Jordan, and 2 younger brothers, Josiah and Jeremiah. My brother quit playing hockey when he was a senior in high school and took on football and baseball. And then my sister actually played at the University of North Dakota. And then my little brother is in the USHL right now playing for the Tri-City Storm. And my youngest little brother, Jeremiah, is 12 years old, and he's playing for the Colorado Thunderbirds right now.
Nice. All of you. That's crazy. And all the names starting with J, all biblical names.
Yep, exactly.
Now, I got to ask you this, because what were your parents thinking with your first name? Because even just trying to type your name on my computer to do prep, I kept getting autocorrect to Jacob. You spell it Jaccob. What's with the extra D?
Yeah, exactly. So Justin and Jordan, both J's, both 6 letters long. And so my grandma was still alive at the time when I was born, and she said, well, you got to make his name 6 letters too. And my parents really liked the name Jacob. So they just figured they'd add an extra C to the name.
Well, there you go. That's great. I mean, how many people have misspelled your name over the years, huh?
I get it all the time.
All the time. That's crazy.
All the time.
So obviously I read that you grew up in a Christian family, going to church on Sundays and youth groups and things like that. And obviously, into sports and hockey. When did your faith in Christ sort of become your own? Because I know people, I did not grow up in a family that has, sort of a Christian background. I got saved when I was older in my 20s. But for yourself, when did your faith sort of become your own? Because I know as a kid, you kind of grow up in faith and it's like all you've known and all you've been taught. But when did that kind of become something that you were own? That was your own faith?
No, that's a great way to put it. Growing up in the Christian home, you kind of always surround yourself with it. And so for myself, it really became my own when I moved away from home. And I was in Chicago playing juniors. I got put with the Billet family, who was also very strong believers. And I really kind of had to come into my own faith. I remember I was in my coach's office, assistant coach's office one day, and he's like, so what kind of faith do you have, or when did you make your faith your own? And I was like, I'm a Christian. And he kind of like stumbled me with that. He kind of stumbled me with that question. And so from there, I would say when I was in Chicago playing juniors is really when I made my faith my own. We had a chaplain there, and Alex Pirates, and he was great. He's been really helpful and really helped me grow in my faith. And so that'd probably be the time frame of when it really became my own. But like you said, like I always knew who Jesus was, what he did for my sins and everything. And but it really became my own and not just relying on my parents in Chicago.
Wow, isn't that interesting? And being 16 or so, and you're in the top junior hockey league in the U.S., like you said, in the USHL, and Chicago with the Steel. What was that like being so young and being away from home? Like, I know I didn't go away till I went to college, but being
Mm-hmm.
15, 16 years old and being away from your family and then finding out your faith is own, like there's a lot going on there at such a young age for you.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot going on there, and I think it was just all kind of part of God's plan to just really have a relationship with me. And moving away from home at that age, I think it was a little scary, but once we got into it and the family I was with really helped out, and my family was able to travel to Chicago pretty easily. So it wasn't too bad from that standpoint. Didn't get homesick too much. But at the rink every day, all day pretty much, and so not a lot of downtime to do too much stuff other than play video games. But
Right.
it was an easy transition for me, and I think my little brother Josiah is kind of going through the same thing right now, playing with Tri-City. He's kind of the same way I was, like relying on your parents when you're at home for the Christian faith, and then once he moved away, I've seen so much growth in his relationship with Christ this year, and it's just been so awesome to see that. So I think me and him are kind of in the same boat.
That's great to hear. That's awesome. We're talking to Jaccob
Mm-hmm.
Slavin, the Carolina Hurricanes defenseman. Now, I read that while you were in Chicago, you met your now wife, Kylie, on what I guess you would call the modern day blind date. Tell us the story of how you met and how that kind of relationship began.
Yeah, so that's I think one of my favorite stories. I was in Chicago, obviously playing hockey, and I mean that really has nothing to do with the fact of how I met her, other than the fact that I was in Illinois, and she's from Illinois, but about 3 hours south of Chicago. And I was just on Twitter one day and somehow came across one of her tweets, and it was a tweet about Jesus and being on fire for Christ, and so I was like, oh, interesting. And so I clicked on her profile and I started reading through her tweets and everything, and you could just tell she loved the Lord and was on fire for God. And I scrolled back up, clicked on the picture, and I was just like, oh, wow, okay. And I was sold after that. And then I followed her. She didn't follow me back. And so I guess I had to work at it. And
Oh, yeah. If you don't get the follow back right away, it's like, what's going on?
No, exactly. So I kept following her or whatever, and then finally, she followed me back. And then she put out a tweet one time saying, Snapchat me, and put out a Snapchat. And so me being a bored junior player, of course I'm going to take advantage of that. And so I sent her a Snapchat of me lip singing to Taylor Swift, actually. And that's when she was like, okay, this guy isn't a creeper, he's just a weirdo. And we ended up talking after that, and we were Skyping and talking over the phone and everything for about 3.5 weeks. And then my season ended in Chicago, and I was able to drive down and meet her and her family. And then we did long distance for 1.5 years until she moved out to Colorado and lived with the family friends while I was going to college. And we were able to have a normal dating relationship. And then after my sophomore year of college, we got married and then moved out to Carolina together.
Wow, that's such a great story. Talking to Jaccob Slavin,
I know.
Carolina Hurricanes defenseman. Now you've been married almost 2 years now. I think this summer it'll be 2 years. What's the one lesson you took away from these past 2 years that you would pass on to someone who might be listening that's thinking about getting married or just not quite there yet? Because you're so young. So what's that lesson that you've learned over the last couple of years?
I think being married has been the biggest lesson in life. We've had a lot of great times of growth in our faith, especially moving out to Raleigh and just moving away from our family and stuff. It's really kind of made us figure out stuff for our own, and we've just had so much growth in our faith out here. And I think the biggest thing learned from marriage, though, is we've just seen God's grace in a whole new way. It's just been unbelievable with the people we've met out here, with the experiences we've had. God's grace is just shown in a whole new way through marriage, and you really have to try to exemplify His grace through it all. And it's just been such a blessing.
Now, how's it been kind of staying grounded in your faith during a long, grueling NHL season? as a young married couple? Because obviously you're away a lot, you're on the road, you're practicing, and it's kind of like it's not this glamorous life. It is, but it isn't. So how have you been able to stay grounded in your faith during such a long, grueling season?
For us, it's not too hard. Obviously, we have each other, but we've met so many great friends through the church out here, and I think that really helps my wife out a lot when I'm on the road or whatever. She actually has friends that she can go to and that she can have accountability partners with or whatever it may be. She's been able to have that out here, and then it's also just we've realized it's a platform God has given us, so we try to go into each day thinking, okay, who can we witness to? Obviously, some days are easier than others to witness to, but something to go with that, and something that we like God has reminded us of, that this is the reason we're here, is my wife was actually able to help lead one of the girlfriends on the team to Christ this year.
That's awesome.
And so I know, it was unbelievable. And so just seeing that, we're like, okay, my whole career could have been meant for this girl to come to Christ, and it would be a success.
Yep.
And so it's just been really awesome, and it reminded us that, okay, this is why we are here, and we're just going to keep trying to live like Christ does.
I love that. Talking to Jaccob Slavin, Carolina Hurricanes defenseman here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Now, Jaccob, you mentioned about being grounded in your faith and plugging into a local church in Carolina. I read that a lot of people, their hometowns, they're all over the country and they go back to their hometowns or they gravitate to a place to train. Last summer, you stayed in Raleigh and kind of got acclimated to the community in Raleigh, plugged into a local church community. What was behind that decision, and is that something you plan on doing, this summer as well, this off season?
Like you said, we just getting plugged into the church. I think it's the people out here that really helped us stay, kind of caused us to stay. Obviously, we wanted to get back home to our families and everything, but we kind of made it our home out here, and our families understood that, and we still go back and visit them quite a bit and everything. But no, just being out here and getting plugged into those churches and the community that we have out here, it was hard to leave that. And the friends out here, I think we'll be friends for a lifetime. So it's been a blessing to be out here and meet the people that we have.
That's so crucial to be plugged into a local church, even for a professional athlete. That's very cool. Now, what's the toughest part right now? You've been a professional athlete for just a couple seasons. What's the toughest part about being a professional athlete? I guess not just a professional athlete, but a Christian professional athlete.
I would say just the temptations. It's so easy to fall into being content in your faith. It's so easy to fall into being distracted with all the other things that go on around you, whether it just be laziness from the downtime that you do have, to sitting on your phone instead of digging into the Word, or whatever it is, or falling into materialistic things. It's so just trying to stay grounded in your faith and realizing that everything you have is from God, and that God still wants us to honor Him with our finances and with the choices we make there. And so I would say just the temptation is probably the hardest part of not falling into earthly minded things.
Okay, so on the ice, you ascended, like I said, to the NHL pretty quickly. You finished your college career spring of 2015. Before you know it, 14 games in the AHL, and you're in the big leagues. At the age of 21, let's go to November 20th, 2015. You make your NHL debut. What was that day like for you?
Oh, that was awesome. My parents were able to be there. My wife was able to come up from Charlotte. It was a pretty surreal moment. Just the whole day was pretty nervous going into the game. But it was unbelievable. I think we lost in the shootout that day. So it was still awesome. We played the Toronto Maple Leafs, and all the guys say, I remember one of the guys coming up to me saying after the game, like, "Oh, great game, whatever." That was a pretty boring game for your first one. And I was like, "What do you mean? That was awesome." But so it was pretty sweet though, and I'll never forget that.
That's awesome. Now, as a defenseman, the position that you play, for those who don't follow hockey that closely, you don't get to score a lot of goals. I think this year, 2016-17, you had maybe 5 or 6 total. But on March 13th, you basically got half of the goals for the entire season. So you end up with a hat trick against the Islanders. What was that day like as a defenseman, scoring 3 goals? How cool is that?
Well, that was the first time in my life it's ever happened, so
That
I
right?
definitely hope it gets down. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, maybe as like a mini mite or something when I was super young, but in any like super competitive hockey, not that I can remember. And so that day was that was a pretty special day, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I guess the puck was just trying to find the back of the net that day, but it was a lot of fun. My wife is pretty mad at me though, because every time she's busy doing something, and whether it's small group or having dinner with a gal, is when I tend to always score goals. So she was able to see the third one at least.
Did you get to keep the puck? How does that work in hockey? Do you get to keep the pucks? Do you have like engravement on it? Like something like that is obviously not common for a defenseman. Do you get to take something home with you and put it on the shelf or the mantle?
Yeah, yeah. I think the equipment managers kept the pucks for me, so we'll see what they do with that. I know for my first goal, they kept the puck, and then I ended up putting it at a huge old plaque for me, and having like the picture of me scoring my first goal and the celebration after. And so I don't know if they'll do that with the hat trick pucks or not, but we'll see.
That's cool. Cool. We're talking to Jaccob Slavin, Carolina Hurricanes defenseman here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We're going to wrap it up, Jacob, with some rapid fire, and then I got one last question for you that we ask all our guests. So let's do some rapid fire. You ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go. The best concert you've ever been to?
Ooh, 10th Avenue North.
10th Avenue North. Big fan of those guys. Love them. Tell me, where was it? Why was it the best?
It was actually at a little golf classic they had last summer, and they're just so real. Getting to meet them after and everything, they're just a bunch of real guys with genuine faith and truly love the Lord. So it was just a really unique experience.
Love that. Big fans of their music. How about your favorite food? You said you're basically eating anything right now. What's your favorite food?
Ooh, favorite food? Probably a good steak, but I'm a good Italian dish is always good too. But I'd say steak and potatoes.
Love that. How about your favorite movie? Best movie you've ever seen?
Oh, there's so many out there. I don't want to. It's a tough one.
Pick one or two. Maybe something that when it's on, you're always watching it.
Okay. Okay. Miracle's probably always one.
Yeah.
That's a good one to watch. I know it's cliche for a hockey guy, but no, my wife and I, we like animated movies too.
Yeah.
And so any animated Disney movie is always good.
I love that. That's cool. Don't ever grow out of that when you have kids, by the way. You'll love that. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
All right. So the biggest starstruck moment since getting to the NHL, you're almost, and it doesn't even have to be a hockey player. It just might have been somebody that you got to meet because you're on the Hurricanes. Just that biggest starstruck moment in the 2 years you've been in Carolina.
I would probably say first home preseason game last year. I started the game. I wasn't supposed to play that game, but one of our defensemen got hurt. And first shift of the game, 19 seconds into the game, Alex Ovechkin dangled me and scored.
Welcome to the NHL, rookie.
No, that's exactly what it was. And it was bad. I think my jock still might be up there.
That's so funny. Do you just kind of smile at that moment and be like, well, that's Ovi. What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I came back to the bench, and that's what everybody was saying was, don't worry about it. Slav, it's just that's Ovechkin. He's the best guy in the world, or best player in the world. So it's pretty.
That's
I was
pretty
just
cool.
like, yeah. And so there are highlights of it. I just had to rewatch all the time.
How about since coming to the NHL, who's had the biggest impact on your life, personally or professionally?
I would say since coming to Carolina, biggest impact on my life. There's a couple people. One is one of the best friends we met out here, Steven Madsen. He's probably 5 or 6 years older than us, but him and his wife have just been so great to my wife and I. And he's super strong in his faith, challenges me, keeps me accountable, and really encourages me. And so he's had a tremendous help out here. And then also our chaplain, Sid Graham. Pretty much I could say the same thing about him that I said about Steven. He's such a genuine guy and always there for anybody on the team. Any questions I have, I can always come to him with, and I know he'll give me a good biblical answer.
Best team that you've faced this year, and this might coincide with the team that we need to be watching during the Stanley Cup playoffs.
That's tough. I think it's definitely from the Eastern Conference. I'd probably have to say Washington or Pittsburgh. They're just, I mean, their skill set, their personnel level is unbelievable. So I'd probably say one of those two teams.
Okay. Is there something you do before every game, kind of a pregame ritual, anything that you have to do before each game?
I wouldn't say I have to do it, but something I do before every game is take a pregame nap.
A nap.
Yeah,
Naps are
pregame nap.
underrated.
Right.
We all need naps, man.
No, exactly. Right after pregame meal, go turn off the lights for about 2 hours and try to get some sleep.
That's good. How about my last question in the rapid fire? Your favorite Bible verse? What is it?
Favorite Bible verse is Titus 3:7. I like that one just because it talks about the hope that we can have because of God's grace, and just it kind of sums up the gospel to me. It talks about how we have hope and His eternity and everything, and it just really hits home to me.
Titus 3:7 for those taking notes at home. Okay, my last question to you, Jacob, and I really appreciate your time and you being on the podcast with us. We ask this to all of our guests on the show. What is God teaching you right now?
Right now, God. So we just had a small group meeting the other night, and just talking about Francis's Chan book, You and Me Forever, and pretty much the theme of that book. It leaves you with one commandment: it's go and make disciples, and that's Jesus' command to us. And so that's really been working my wife's and I heart right now, and just what are we doing in our lives that truly matter. And what are we doing to make disciples? And every decision we make needs to be based around, okay, how is this going to help us make disciples?
Man.
And so God's really been putting that on our heart lately. And so we've just been, I would say that's probably the biggest thing God's doing in our life right now.
Funny, it's the simplest thing. It's the biggest commandment He gives us, and yet it's some of the most powerful experiences we can have in our lives. Man, that's great. Go and make disciples. Jacob Slavin, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. Love to have you back on again sometime, maybe next year. And best of luck to you and your wife and all your future endeavors. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
And our many thanks to Jaccob Slavin, Carolina Hurricanes defenseman, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. What a funny story from Jacob, huh? About the time, the way he met his wife, and the way he ended up asking her out on social media and Twitter. I mean, that was just a lot of fun. So we appreciate Jacob joining us and wish him the absolute best, because he's only 23 years old. We wish him the best for a very long and prosperous NHL career. Our next episode, which is our regularly scheduled episode, it's this Friday. It's going to be released. It is our distinct pleasure to welcome to the podcast TNT's Ernie Johnson. Now, you know Ernie from hosting the Inside the NBA show with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and Shaquille O'Neal. But Ernie has a new book out, and in it he details some really amazing things that have happened in his life. His walk through cancer, adopting, becoming a Christian, which didn't happen to him until he was in his early 40s, and really just kind of that walk with Jesus and how that's kind of changed his life and perspective. We also talk about the time right after the election when he sat there on that TNT set and basically pointed everybody back to Jesus, and how Jesus was who he was looking to on the throne, not Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. Pretty amazing, powerful interview. I'm excited for you to hear it. It comes out this Friday. Make sure you download. And as always, leave a review on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you think of the podcast. And get in touch with us. You can tweet at me, at Jason Romano. I love hearing from you guys. And I'm just really excited to see what God is going to do and continue to do with this podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week. And we will talk to you soon.